Now, on the education front, I should just say too, on the relation to the floods, parents need to check. More than 100 public schools have been closed right across New South Wales today. Over 20 evacuation orders have been issued. Thousands of people have already been evacuated and 2,800 residents have been moved in the Western Sydney area alone. We're told by the Bureau of Meteorology that the floods are on course to be the worst in New South Wales since 1961, bigger than the 1990 flood and bigger than the 1964 flood. And one of the biggest floods, they say, we are likely to see for a very long time. For example, there's a story today about Miss Nellie's Cafe, which has long been a landmark in Kendall, a tiny town southwest of Port Macquarie. The point is, the building's 100 years old. It's survived every imaginable flood and fire and coronavirus. The floods have now claimed the cafe. It could not withstand thousands of tonnes of rushing water. The cafe owner, Janelle Nosworthy, said, one of our friends went into the shop because we couldn't get in, and they rang in tears and said, the veranda's gone, the garage is gone, and the wall has been ripped off. It's now just a pile of rubble. Many of these stories are being told, and we may not have seen the worst of it. Ian Wright is a water scientist from Western Sydney University. There's a lot of conjecture about whether or not water should have been released earlier from the Warragamba Dam. Let's talk to the expert, Ian Wright. Ian, thank you for your time. Look, as a water scientist, how do you view what is happening across Queensland and New South Wales?
Good evening, Alan. This is quite without precedent as far as I've seen in my professional life. And I think this ranks, I haven't seen floods and incredible deluges of rain like this up and down the coast and now spreading inland. And I saw a map over the state tonight, and it's about 3/4 of the state, Alan. So I've never seen it, and I think for so many of us, it's just not in our professional or personal experience to see something of this scale.
Let me ask you this, given that knowledge and given that this was predicted, should water have been released from the Warragamba Dam?
I think that's something that's going to have to be looked at very carefully. My own understanding is that the dam does not have that in its operational procedures.
That's correct.
But it was built as Sydney's prime water supply, and it was built to the absolute limit of the technology, from the late 1940s through to 1960. And I think it was just incredible luck, more than good management last year, Alan, when we had floods in February and the capacity of Warragamba went from 40% up to 80%. So it did act as a flood mitigation dam, but that really was accidental.
Yes.
Should it have been released before? Look, I don't know.
I think Gladys Berejiklian is right here. You've got to make a judgment call. It wouldn't have been possible to drain enough water out of the dam to avoid the spillage. I mean, the dam's got a storage capacity of 2,000 gigalitres, but they're saying 1,500 gigalitres will flow into the dam in this week. So the maths say no water release would have avoided an overflow. Is that the way you see it?
It is, absolutely, and they are really gargantuan figures.
Gargantuan, yes.
Nearly a year's water supply of Sydney's consumption went over the dam wall last year.
Yes.
And really, it's still raining, and there's more rain predicted.
My word.
Incredible volumes.
And coming back to your point, I mean, it is true that the protocols, and these may have to be analysed, the protocols say that the dam can only be drained to 1 litre below full supply level. So, Ian, these are matters now that must be reviewed. You're the expert. How long do you think before these circumstances could occur again?
That's a great question, Alan, and the history shows us we can go into these wetter periods. The 1890s, they had nearly a flood every year after the giant flood of 1867, which was roughly 7 metres higher than this today. The 1980s, I was a student at the Ag College out at Richmond, and we had a flood every year. Yes. And then we've essentially gone for 30 years without a flood. So I think we need to... there's a lot to unfold yet, but I think we need to look at this very carefully.
You've said, sorry to interrupt you, use these words, you said, we're going to need a thorough analysis after this. What should we be analysing?
Well, firstly, one of my greatest concerns at the moment, Alan, is the evacuations. The evacuations, for example, for Picton happened at 10 to 2 the other morning, and they had to be out by 6 o'clock. Now, at least Picton, they can evacuate to higher ground, but there's communities along the river, and their escape route, their evacuation route, are cut.
That's it. That's it.
It's incredibly hard. The civil engineering disaster, if this goes ahead. So one of the big ones is going to be, how can you get these people out safely and give them notice?
Quite. Then, of course, under the current Warragamba Dam rules, its function is only to store water. It has no mandate for flood mitigation. That, I guess, should be looked at, shouldn't it?
I think that's one of the options that's on the table. Absolutely. Look, for me, and I currently work at Richmond at the university now, the acceleration of urban development, not just in the floodplain, but around, for example, Kurrajong, Kermond, North Richmond, they're currently cut off. They can't even drive via Bellsline Road because of landslide. So I think we need to look at how we get people in and out and across these flood zones.
My word.
And it is predictable. The SCS has predicted exactly this. And one of the big concerns was, how do we educate the community about it?
Hard, very difficult.
Absolutely.
Ian, great to talk to you. That's Ian Wright. Thank you for your time. He's a water scientist from Western Sydney University.
Thank you very much.